Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about the book I finished. It's by T.E. Lawrence. It's called The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. This is about 680 pages and it's a difficult book. My plan here is I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the book and the writing. Then I'm going to watch the film, The Lawrence of Arabia, because that's based on this book. I wanted to read the book completely so I knew it, and then watch the film, and then review the film, and then I would also distinguish the book from the film. So this is going to be an extended video. I knew it was a classic, and I had seen the film, so I knew it was about Arabia and the battles there that this Englishman participated in. I didn't have a real specific memory of the film and the details of the film, though, so I wasn't sure what to expect from the book. But one thing that really that threw me off was the title, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. Because when I looked at the title, I would often think, oh, this is a book about wisdom, which has to do with philosophy. Philosophy is the love of wisdom. Or this has to do with religion, because I thought it was related to the Bible. So I kind of thought it had a religious, philosophical bent, which is not my preference for reading material. And that was kind of one thing that deterred me. And then I started reading the book and thinking that it's called The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I'm kind of literal in that way. And then I kept thinking, when is he going to start talking about the 7 pillars of wisdom? And about 200 pages in, I realized he's not going to talk about the 7 pillars of wisdom. That's not really in the book. What I did was I went to my online AI chat, which I use Gemini, and I asked the AI, I'm reading the 7 pillars of wisdom, but T.E. Lawrence doesn't seem to mention the 7 pillars of wisdom. And here's his response. You're absolutely right. While the title, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom, might initially suggest a direct exploration of 7 specific principles or concepts, T.E. Lawrence actually uses it as a metaphor for the complex and interconnected factors that shaped his experiences in the Arab Revolt. So then it says the 7 pillars can be called physical endurance, moral courage, intellectual curiosity, spiritual connection, political savvy, military strategy, friendship, and loyalty. I found out that the reference to the 7 pillars is in Proverbs 9:1. I got stuck on that. I just thought I'd bring that out if someone else gets stuck on it. I started the book, and it is a tough read. And as I started the book, it's really a travel log. It's a military travel log. First T.E. Lawrence is in a desk job, and then he gets transferred to as a consultant to the Arabs in the Arab Revolt. And they are in conflict with the Turks, who have taken territory in Arabia, Israel, Palestine, and Syria, and Jordan. So he's moving all around, and they're doing these little skirmishes against the Turks. He makes a distinction that I liked about how the Arabs they're an unconventional force because they're not very good at organizing like in the way we think of in a Western military culture where there's troops and they all walk in line and they all dress the same and they have this written vocabulary that they all use to communicate. And so like the Arabs are more individuals. They would not do well against a direct battle to a Western style of conflict. His style is to talk about where they're going. They're always moving on the move, and he learns how to ride a camel and travel with this group. So he's learning the language, he's learning the culture, he's learning the customs, he's learning how these guys communicate. He's learning about their slaves there, and then they get into several conflicts, and he's setting these explosives. So after a while, I realized he's a demolition expert. He doesn't really outright says it, but he's always talking about all these bombing trains and setting it up, the the wiring from the bomb to the plunger, and he's always kind of thinking in that way. Then he's also the transitions in the book are not very good. It just is like one day he's doing this, the next day he's doing this, and it kind of feels like he's writing. He wrote this as a memoir. It was self-published, and then it became a sensation in Britain. And it feels like he just wrote it as a memoir. He doesn't. It feels like he wasn't really writing it for a mass audience. He was probably writing it for more of a military audience, people who kind of knew what he was talking about. So I felt like a lot of things weren't explained, but that's just the way it is. That's what happens. All books aren't planned to be classics. So as he's traveling, he always kind of notices the nature and the natural elements of the desert, and how he's moved by the natural elements of the desert. Because, most military people aren't writers, and they don't seem to have much appreciation for nature. And so I found his personality very unusual and outstanding in that respect. He starts down in an area called near Medina, and then he has some successes there, and then he tells his superiors that they should try to take Aqaba, which is north. So then they have this journey to Aqaba, and then they take Aqaba, and it's very good. And it's kind of just from his viewpoint. It's not really like a macro level. It's kind of, he tells you a little bit about what other people are doing, but because he's traveling around, there's a lot of geographical names. Lots of little towns, little ridges, little wadi. They're called wadi, and I think that's kind of a flat area that he travels through, mountain ridges. And so because there's so many names, and then there's a lot of Arabs that he meets, there's just so much factual names of people that it took me many hundreds of pages to kind of get acclimated to the geography of where he was and what he was doing. So because that is included, it's another level of complexity to the story. And then because of that, I'm going to give it another demerit and kind of drop it down to a third tier classic. It's still a classic, but it's kind of a third tier classic. Then they kind of conquer the Hijaz, a place called the Hijaz, and they move to Aqaba. And after he has the success, he's very humble, and he just moves on to the next thing. But you do feel like he really has made these enormous accomplishments by working with the Arabs and blowing up things and keeping things on focus with the Arabs. I always felt that overall he was doing an amazing job, but he's humble, and that could be related to one of the 7 pillars of wisdom. Okay, so now I have watched the film Lawrence of Arabia by David Lean. So I want to talk about my experience reading the book and watching the film. I must say this is an outstanding experience for me. Now, I have seen Lawrence of Arabia before, and I liked Lawrence of Arabia, but I actually felt it was too long, and I didn't kind of understand what was going on. I was, blown away by the imagery and the cinematography and all the characters, and it was just very exciting. But I kind of didn't really get the story. I just remember Aqaba, and I didn't really follow it. And I want to say something about that. Sometimes I've noticed in myself that when I say, "Oh, this film's too long," it sounds like I'm diminishing the film, like the director, made it too long. What I've realized, a couple of decades ago was when I say the film's too long, what I'm really saying is I got overloaded. So this is like a 3-hour film, and what I think's happening is that when you watch the film, it's so much information to take in that when you're stuck in your chair for 3 hours, you get overloaded halfway through. And so the second half of the film is just like you cannot absorb it. And so a person like myself ends up saying, oh, it's too long. Whereas I should admit my own deficiency that I can't handle that much entertainment. So I can only take in so much entertainment, and even reading, I have my limits on reading, and I've become much more aware of my own attention. And so when my attention starts to disconnect from the story, whether reading or movies, I just stop. I'm just like, I'm out. I don't care if it's 30 minutes or whatever the time is, I'm out. The way I'm going to talk about this is, first I'll talk about the film and what I liked. The whole experience just makes the film work much, much better. I mean, like, when you know the story from the book, and then I know it all. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know all the main points. I know all the characters. And like, people talk about spoilers. Don't tell me the spoilers. I knew everything, and I still love the film. So sometimes I don't really care about spoilers because I can still enjoy the film. And actually, if the only thing that's good about a film is some twist in the plot or whatever, then it's not a very good film. It's got to have more than just like, oh, I'm surprised and blah, blah, blah. I get that that's nice when you watch it. If it's a great film, you should be able to watch it several times, and you'll always know that special spot in the film. If that's all the film has, then it's probably not a good film. When I examine this film, what I'm going to do is kind of my old school method that I developed in my 20s. Talk about each aspect of the film and then rate it and then put the whole thing together. So, we talk about the cinematography. Perfect. We talk about the actors and the casting. Absolutely perfect. Peter O'Toole, perfect. King Faisal is Alec Guinness, perfect. Anthony Quinn as Ouda, perfect. Omar Sharif as Ali, perfect. Then you have the military guys, they're perfect. You have the random Arabs, they're perfect. Jose Ferrer, he's perfect. Actors, perfect. The acting. I can't think of anything in the acting that fails. The acting's perfect. There's some great transitions in the film between scenes that's really notable. The soundtrack, perfect. The sound, perfect. The art direction, perfect. The historical authenticity of all the guns and the costumes and the military equipment, perfect. What else? The screenplay, perfect. What else did they give Academy Awards for? Okay, the production, perfect. The direction, perfect. I always kind of wonder, if you should give all the credit to the director or give some to the producer, who was named Sam Spiegel, because sometimes I think the producers have a lot of influence. Sometimes I don't know. But anyway, it's perfect. So those are the main, they're all perfect. So when you put it all together, perfect in every category, it's a perfect film. So now I want to talk about the difference between the book and the film. Now, when you put them together, it's so great because it's pure genius when you put the two together. It's an amazing experience, so I highly recommend it. To me, the book kind of has three different emphases. You have the story of the man, which is good, but you also have his kind of diary, and he's putting all these geographical places, and he's putting all these dates. And that's kind of like a record keeping. That's part of the book. There's no real record keeping in the film. Then you have another part of the book is the love for the desert and the visual things that he's seeing and how amazed he is and how much he loves the desert. The main thing that that the film filters out is all the detailed records, which really did kind of bog down the book. And when I was reading the book, I talked about that and how it skewed the story. And so the film is more about the story of the man and his journey, his personal journey, and his participation in this historical events, and the amazing desert and the people, the Arabs. It's such a great choice that David Lean made. What he did was just so smart and just genius. When you read the book and some of the key points happen, where he decides to go to Aqaba, where he meets with Faisal, where he meets with the British military in Cairo, where all these things occur. His demeanor in the book is very measured, but in the film it's very emotional, very emotional. And I like some of the scenes, some of the great scenes in the military, where he goes back to Cairo and he talks to all the other soldiers in the officers' bar. Those are so great because you get the transition between the desert and them. Oh, that's just so perfect. Which you don't get that feeling at all in the book. And so that's just one example. You know, there's so many scenes. The thing I would say that's more in the book that's not so much in the film is, in the film it romanticizes the desert experience, but when I was reading the book I was like, wow, this is really tough what this guy's going through. The heat, the camels, the people, the fasting, like it was really much more, I felt it much more the physical fortitude that he had to have in the book than I did in the film. I just felt it more in the book. I don't know how, that's all I feel. That's all I want to say on that. Where he has the whole section where he has the breakdown and he wants to quit. And then he goes back to Cairo, and how that officer, I think it was Allenby, convinced him to return. That was just very well done. Also, some of the scenes in the film where the military guys were talking about how they used Lawrence, just to achieve their aims, and kind of kept him. They didn't really tell him what was going on the diplomatic side. That was really good, and that was murky in the book. You know, I'm just filled with so many accolades that I feel like I might be over the top here with my praise. I could probably go through every single scene and compare it to the book, and I would exhaust your patience, and so I'm not going to do that. But that's how excited I got by going through this. I'm just going to end it here and say this was a great experience.